Can you provide a helpful explanation for the shift in support from your trustees? I voted for them as well as you in the election, and I'm genuinely interested in understanding the reasons for this change because the reporting was very vague. Okay, so I'll start by saying that since I was elected in 2019, I have made my fair share of mistakes. That's natural for anyone who's starting a new job, particularly for someone who is coming in passionate but yet green in order to be the mayor of a very important community such as Southampton Village with a lot of interests at play. And like I said, I have certainly made my fair share of mistakes. And I'm happy to say that I now can look back during that time and have believe that I've learned from many of those mistakes. And those mistakes have turned into a great learning experience for me. I've worked with other mayors. I've joined the board of the Suffolk County Villages Officials Association, and I've found mentors, other mayors, past mayors who have been able to help guide me along the way. But this is a very tough job, and it's inevitable that you'll make mistakes along the way. And I'm happy that I've learned from many of those mistakes. And I think I can turn those mistakes into the betterment for this village. And I now know how to really work and within a governmental framework. And I've researched the law and municipal law and village code, et cetera. But I think that one of the worst mistakes that I've made was really not vetting people before I backed them. And in particular, this was with the last 2022 election, where I was approached by Bill Manger, who is running against me in this election. And he approached me and he said, I really believe in what you're doing and I want to help you. And I'd like to join your team. And I ended up really running his campaign and telling a lot of my supporters to vote for him. And unfortunately, I hadn't vetted him properly. I knew that he did come from a Washington, D.C. background. He served 2 tours in Washington, D.C. Most recently, he served doing the PPP loans in the Trump administration. And I did know that going into it, but I really thought that I could work with anybody. And I really believe that, and I still do. But unfortunately, when he came in, he did bring his Washington, D.C. brand of politics into the village. He had an agenda that I was warned about, but I really didn't want to believe it. And very quickly, 3 months in, he really let everyone know that he was running for mayor. And he made my life very tough in Village Hall and made it very hard for me to do my job. Deals were cut, things unfolded. I stayed positive throughout the process. Anyone who's watched the meetings know that I've always conducted myself professionally and have maintained my composure. But bringing this Washington, D.C. style politics into the village, I don't think was for the betterment of anybody, and definitely not for the betterment of our village board. I'll also say that local politics, like national politics, there's a lot of interests at play. And just like in national politics in Southampton Village, there are people and groups who are very politically involved. And some of these groups are very well backed, they're very wealthy, and they're very powerful, and they have a lot of influence over all of the elected officials. But I've always thought of myself as being independent, and I've always wanted to make the right decisions for the village. And so when representatives of this group came to me and had asked me to do certain things, there are certain things I believe that were the right things for the village and certain things that were not the right things for the village. And I did have to tell an individual from this group that I could not agree with some of the things that he wanted the board to do. But I will say very clearly that there are groups, particularly one specific group, that has tremendous influence over all of the Board of Trustees. But I have been always independent. I have always worked for you. I've always worked for the entire village of Southampton. And one of the reasons why everyone has always seen me knocking on every door and shaking every hand and returning every phone call, whether it be at 6 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at night, is because I can be independent when I know I have your support. And I think that makes me a better mayor by being able to be independent and working for the whole village. There were also a few specific decisions and votes that took place that did have a specific impact on our overall board and did impact my relationship with some of the trustees. In particular, the most important vote that took place was the vote to appoint a chief of police, or in that particular case, in December 2022, a second acting and provisional chief. In December 2022, the Board of Trustees, without my support, went ahead and appointed an individual to be an acting or provisional chief of police. Just to clarify, in order to be a permanent chief of police, you must pass a Suffolk County and New York State civil service examination. This individual, again, I voted against this appointment due to a variety of reasons, which I'm going to outline right now. This individual did not pass the chief of police exam. And you don't just have to pass it, you actually have to score in the top 3 in the entire state of New York. And I knew that you had top ranking members from the NYPD department coming out, top ranking members from the state police coming out, from Southampton Town Police coming out, from East Hampton Town Police coming out, Riverhead, et cetera, et cetera. Even our own outstanding members of our police department were going to be taking this test. So it made little to no sense for me to appoint somebody in December who had not taken or passed the test. Oh, and by the way, I also forgot to mention that the last test that was given, the chief of Bedford, New York, who is the exam instructor, also took that test. So scoring the top 3 was going to be next to impossible. So it made no sense for me to appoint somebody who likely was not going to score in the top 3 and then would have to be removed from his position after we just finished training him and he just got acquainted with the village. So I felt in that situation that I made the best decision for the community. In particular, I also felt that many residents and their voices were not heard. I think that we have an outstanding local police department, and I think that somebody who had local ties, and we have exceptional people with local ties and exceptional people in our own department, I felt that it was unfair to exclude some of those people from that process. And I do want to add that as a result of my no vote, we now have a new test that's being administered. The individual who was hired decided not to take the position. And our captain, who's done an outstanding job, and I'm happy to talk about any of this later on as well, is now signed up for a provisional exam, which means that it's a different exam from the rest of the state. And I believe that she's done an outstanding job. And I think that this time we're going to get it right. And I think that my vote no for this appointment, especially with the test situation, was the right vote for the community. I also just wanted to address a few things that had come out. I also had not had an opportunity to look at the contract. Neither did the village attorney, but it was my understanding that the contract that was offered to someone that we had met about 3 times was a 5-year contract for a substantial compensation package. And there was no reason to give a 5-year contract. Typically, if you have a new employee, you don't want to give a 5-year contract out. You can have a smaller or shorter contract so that we can evaluate and then extend later on. And there's a number of things and problems with that agreement that took place. I don't need to go so much into the details there, but I also wanted to address another thing. There were some rumors that took place. One of those was that I was actually in support of this candidate and I didn't tell anybody that took place. That's 100% false. I made it very clear to the entire Board of Trustees that I would not be supporting this candidate, and that I expressed my concerns as to why this person's resume came in. I received this person's resume. I forwarded it to the board, as is my obligation to do, but at no time did I ever tell the board that I would be voting for this person. I actually called each and every member of the board up and told them that I could not support this person, again, because I felt it was the best decision to make for the community. I also will say that there were people who back some of the trustees who had called me up and demanded to me in no uncertain terms that I vote for this individual. And to those people, I simply said, I can't do it. I have to do what's best for the community. And that was a very tough decision to make. And it was a tough decision to make because on the one hand, you want to keep the flow of business going well. You want to go along and you want to get along. But there are other times where you have to go with your convictions and you have to go with what you believe is right. And in this particular situation with the chief of police appointment, I did what I thought was right. and I did what I thought was best for the community. The second vote that came up was one that I also felt was troubling. And it was a vote that I also had to disagree with the trustees on a 3-2 vote. We have an outstanding beach in Coopers Beach. It's number 3 again in the country. And it's number 3 because we have outstanding village employees who come in and make sure that beach is spotless and clean and pristine. Matt Weeks runs the beach. He's an outstanding beach manager. We have the best and most elite lifeguards. We have students coming in to help work in Coopers Beach over the summer. We have an ocean rescue department, which we helped start to help keep our beaches safer as well. But there was a situation where we had a great local person who had managed that concession stand for 3 years, helped get us through the pandemic. And his bid was in, as well as another bid. And while I'm optimistic about the new bid and the new person who's taken us over, I believe that our former operator was the right choice. And one thing that was deeply troubling to me, and while she may have recused herself from the process, the person who was awarded the Coopers Beach concession stand was the village administrator's brother-in-law. And I have fought for transparency. I have fought to end nepotism, and awarding that contract was really against everything that I stood for. But what was more troubling about that vote, and again, I felt the right thing to do was to bring this to the public's attention, was that the awarding of that contract was not even made and brought to the public's attention. It was not on our agenda. And the vote itself, which was not illegal, but was wrong, took place in private. And that is not what this administration is about. It is not what I think is appropriate for the village. And the fact that that vote took place without the public even knowing about it was totally unacceptable to me. And again, I had a choice to let that one go, or I had a choice to bring that to the public's attention. And again, my job is to represent all of the village and all of the residents and all of the stakeholders. And that just did not sit well with me. And again, this is a tough situation because sometimes there's no easy answers. Sometimes the outcome is 2 losing outcomes. But in that situation, I again thought I did what was right. And another situation that we spoke about earlier that I thought was the right thing to do was to end the lifetime benefits for current and future elected officials. And again, that was a debate that came up. It was, again, something that I am on a different page than the trustees. I believe they will be changing their tune on this one. But that is another situation where I had to disagree. So to answer that question, in summary, everyone in politics, unfortunately, has an agenda. There are interest groups, particularly one that has a lot of influence over the board. And number 3, there was a number of votes that we had very differences of opinions on. Everyone heard my dog bark there in the background. But as President Truman said about politics, if you want a friend, get a dog. And I did get a dog, but the reality is that government, local government, and politics is a very difficult and sometimes tough business to be in. But I think that most residents and stakeholders know that every day that goes by, I work extremely hard for them. I work extremely hard for the village because I care about the village, because when I have a family, I'd like them to live here, and because I own a business in this village, and I'm very passionate about this job, and I really want to make Southampton Village a better place. And for better or for worse, I am not a quitter. I stick with things. I let things roll off my shoulder at times, and I'm committed to the village, and I'm committed to making it a better place. And I'm also committed to doing what's best for everybody and not just best for a select few group of people.